tentative showing of recovery is beginning to form a more concrete trend after numbers and high frequency indicators in October shows that what was a surprise in September seems to be continuing. So now what am I talking about? I'm talking about high frequency indicators such as GST collections over 1 lakh crore rupees for the month of October. So a steady climb. First time it's crossed 1 lakh crore rupees since March this year. I'm talking about auto sales numbers which have continued to show great recovery. Maruti has shown a 19% jump year on year in its sales figures. Hyundai has had its highest sales ever in India. So that trajectory is continuing. Your e-way bills numbers are looking good. Your core sector data is looking good. Your real estate transactions reportedly are looking good in various segments. So things are on the up and up. The most crucial one in a sense, or one of the important ones which came out today, was the Purchasers Manufacturing Index, which is put together by IHS Markit in India, and that jumped today to 58.9. Now that's the highest jump since May 2010. So it's all pointing in the right direction. Now remember, on this show, through the many months of COVID, we have been consistently and very carefully tracking India's growth story and the impact the pandemic is having on the economy and on growth. So you would know that we're the last ones to jump up and cheerlead any sign of recovery without looking at it in depth. But this is the second month in a row, so it deserves the question on whether this is now forming a sustainable trend. To help us answer that today on the show are DK Joshi, Chief Economist of CRISIL, Dilip Chenoy, Secretary General of FICCI, and author and journalist Puja Mehra. I will come to our panelists just in a bit, but to set the tone with a little more detail on what the numbers are, I want to now add on to the show my colleague Poonam, who's put together some of those high frequency indicators. Poonam?
Well, we are certainly seeing positive signs in terms of the various high frequency indicators. First up, of course, it is the GST collections for the month of October, which has crossed 1 lakh crore mark for the first time this fiscal, and this is the second consecutive month wherein we are seeing GST collections in fact rising. October GST collections is up nearly around 10% on a YOY basis and also has jumped 10% on a month-on-month basis as well, and economists do state that if the trend continues, there could be lower shortfall in GST compensation for states. October manufacturing PMI has come in the highest since October 2007, and this is the strongest PMI data that we have seen in over a decade. This is amidst strongest gain in new work in over 12 years. September core sector data also, the contraction did substantially narrow during this month of September to minus 0.8%, and we did see coal sector production coming back in the positive territory along with steel as well. Average e-way bills have risen to nearly around 2 million in the month of October. September UPI transactions are at a record high, and auto sales data is also pointing out to encouraging trends in the month of October. Festive demand as well as preference for personal mobility is of course driving auto sales in the month of October, and of course the rural demand has been fairly strong, far surpassing the urban demand. The question is the trend in the high frequency indicators sustainable or not, or is this only the pent up demand and the festive demand? So yes, we will have to wait and watch out for these high frequency indicators over the next few months, but as of now certainly positive signs in the economy.
All right, let me come to you first, Mr. Joshi. Do you think that there is a clear trend in place? And I know we've spoken about this earlier, and I remember you telling us very clearly that we have to wait and watch to see if the tide has truly turned. Would you say 2 consecutive months of this kind of an improvement means there is more than pent-up demand, or are we just seeing pent-up demand playing out?
Well, I think I would like to say that, first of all, I think this has surprised on the positive side. I did not expect such a sharp recovery. Second, I think, of course, I mean, it is pent-up demand which is playing out. I think also in addition to that, you have the opening up of the economy, which gradually, I mean, if you notice, I think step by step, I think it is getting opened up. And finally, I think the rural agriculture is still doing well, and the rural demand somewhat benefits from the schemes of the government, which have a rural tilt. I think so. So all this is leading to an upturn. I think the good news is that the month of October, I think, also saw the COVID curve come down. So earlier we were opening up when the COVID was on the rise. So I think it's these two things together. I think our response. I mean, all these things together with COVID-19 inflections coming down. I think they have pushed the economy up. Having said that, I think I would also like to add that we still are in uncharted territory. Let's be clear, because the path of the virus is very difficult to predict. You look at what happened in Europe and in US. I think the virus curve came down. The economy started picking up, and then again there is a very strong resurgence. So I think you need to be a little careful while extra. I mean, I would say that I think that. The performance of the economy is better than expected, but I would be still careful while extrapolating the trends, whether they are on the downside or on the upside, because it's a non-linear path, and non-linear paths are difficult to project going ahead. That's why so many projections for the economy had to be revised time and again. So I think depending on the course of the virus, I mean, we will not be imposing the kind of lockdowns that we saw earlier, but what might happen is that if you see a surge again after the festive season, then the economy will wobble around these levels. I mean, so that's which means that the momentum will fade away. So I think let me stop here, and I think that's the broad understanding I have. And what this means is that the second quarter GDP, which we expected to fall at by 12%, I think it will fall by a little less than that. We don't have the full data for September. I think we'll take a call on the second quarter GDP soon. But clearly there is some upside from our earlier projection.
You know, will there be, just a quick word on that, Mr. Joshi, do you think that there is an opportunity, if we continue in this trajectory, of course, and all things remaining the same and improving, can there be a change in the full year's GDP projection as well? Is that a likelihood on the horizon?
Well, I would say that I think there is always, I think the risks are always tilted towards one side. I think now the risks which were tilted downwards very deeply until about a month back, I think they are less tilted downward. They're still tilted downwards. I mean, till the time you have the vaccine, till the time it is administered, till the time it is found to be effective, you will always have residual anxieties in the system, which will not allow these services economy to come full throttle. I think most of the indicators we talked about generally relate more to manufacturing and industry, not so much to services. And they also don't typically cover the small segments which probably have been hit the hard. So I think this recovery is strong, but it's not a full broad-based recovery, I would say. I think so. You need to be a little careful while and for the small and smaller enterprises, we don't have that much information to assess, but anecdotal evidence does suggest that services are going to take much longer to revive. Till the time, I think the anxieties in the system remain because of COVID-19.
Mr. Chenoy, what is your reading on ground, and especially for smaller businesses, for medium-sized businesses? I mean, among the other parameters that I've described today, if I even add to the mix quarter two corporate results of your top Nifty 50 companies, whichever ones are available now, and more than half are available, they also show that there is an upswing. But is that really a broad-based indicator? What's happening with smaller businesses? What's happening with service sector businesses?
Tamanna, three different trends. So those small and medium businesses, if I take the auto sector to give an example, their tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 are all actually riding on the same wave. So wherever there is an integration of the large, medium and small and the formal and informal sector, they are all growing, whether it's the tractor sector or, if you look at some of the steel area or look at some of the construction equipment sectors, this is there. In the areas where the growth is like mixed. So there are some sectors, let's say FMCG, where some of the companies are come up to very full potential, while some others are not yet being able to come up. Those linked as vendors or suppliers to the large companies are all there. In pharmaceutical sectors and in the whole healthcare related sectors, other than the equipment for non-communicable diseases, because the intake has not been there, they're also growing. So that is one side of the story. If you look at the service related things, and if you look at food, right, processed food. So while we are consuming more at home, some segments of the market are growing, but their hotel, restaurant, and all that segment, the services segment that Mr. Joshi mentioned, that's not showing sufficient demand. So those entities that are actually linked to that sector are not perhaps doing as well. So that's the second thing. The third is that those companies who are non-banked or that were supplied by the NBFC thing, who have a credit squeeze at this point of time, they're facing a different challenge. So if you look today, the announcement to extend the emergency loan scheme for one more month, and I think it might even go on for longer, is to look at that. And therefore the government, the past few days has been saying if there's a necessity to either give more stimulus or, to address pain, and everybody is talking of the services sector, whether it is tourism, airline, hospitality, healthcare, they will look at it. So this is what is actually playing out on the ground. The interesting thing is that at least we expect, since Diwali is mid-November, and the festival season actually continues for 10 more days. So I expect if we were to be sitting here in December or December 1st and looking at this data, November will also be a good month going. And the challenge here is that, we've understood how to control the spread. And it means that all of us have to, wear a mask, social distancing, wash hands, etc. If all of us do this and control the spread and economic activities, goes on, then you might even see a November and December, doing well. Because New Year is also a time which actually people do a lot of gifting around here. The problem is that the tourism season is actually November, December, January, and how we, the current lockdown and current flights are all until the end of November. So how we can actually translate that and impact the services will determine a lot more in how this current quarter pans out.
Yeah. Sure. The interesting thing is about how new ways are being found to fulfill those needs. I mean, we've been doing stories about how homestays have suddenly become very, very popular. Certain segments of tourist destinations are filling up fast with work vacation kind of scenarios. But again, Pooja, the danger here is that you end up looking at things through a very narrow tunnel vision depending on where you are. So for example, I had the opportunity to visit a mall this weekend, and it seemed to me that there were a lot of shoppers queuing up. It looked pretty okay considering all things, but that may not be the entire scenario. So how much can we go by this high frequency data?
Tamanna, I think your observation is absolutely correct. I agree with what you've said, and also with what both of the two panelists who spoke before me said. I think that what we need to look out for is probably the construction sector and the banking financial sector. Both of these sectors, especially the construction sector, a lot of wage employment comes out of it. So numbers wise, the number of people whose wages are going to get affected by the revival in the economy, I think construction is very important there. Also because construction wages then in turn affect rural wages. So I think we should look at construction sector, but the latest core sector data, construction sector related sector, there is cement. Cement is still 16% below normal according to the breakup in the core sector data. So core sector data, the breakup shows that actually it is fertilizers, which is sort of pulled up the overall data, which is expected because we know that the farm sector's sort of been doing all right. So that, and please remember that banking sector, the impact we are not capturing it fully yet because there are moratoriums, etc. So we'll get delayed information on the banking sector. And most of our jobs and incomes are dependent on services sectors. And it's already been said before on your panel that we don't have that much information as yet coming out of services. That said, I think the complications will be when they begin to use all these high frequency indicators to extrapolate, what is going on in the informal economy. Which I have not seen anything as yet on, what is the health of the informal economy as of now. Unfortunately, we don't really know what's going on. I mean, I don't know if you've had any reports, on that part. For instance, if you look at the breakup in GDP, there's a huge sector which is repairs, mechanics, etc. I don't know what's happening, with that sector. So you're right that the information that we have right now does not cover a very large part of the economy. It covers that part of the economy which ends up getting a lot of attention, captures eyeballs and is vocal. A lot of the pain may be right now being felt in that part of the economy which is not as vocal, which we don't have that much information on. Having said all of that, I don't want to lose hope completely. If there is pent up demand and if the festival season does create demand, and if we see some lasting impact of that, and then, as the government is saying, it can do something about spending, and if it does spend in the right way, then if all of those ifs get taken care of in the right way, we may be talking about some kind of recovery.
Yeah, so the thing with the economic recovery also is, Mr. Joshi, and do correct me if I'm wrong, it's also to some extent boosted by sentiment. So when you see consistently that people are buying more cars, that, like I described, you go out and you see that there are people in shops, does it add to that positive sentiment, and can that have some kind of a incremental impact on what we're seeing?
Well, I think, of course, it will. I mean, sentiments do matter, but I think so far, I think RBI survey don't show. I think that's the latest we have until I think FICCI has come out with something recently. I think the business and the consumer sentiment continues to remain weak at this juncture. And I think what's also happening, I think, in the consumption side is that there are a lot of activities people are not able to do. You can't go on a holiday. You can't, so that's, so you are saving some part of your money, which I think you are pumping into the banks, because with negative real interest rates, you are still keeping deposits with the bank, which means there's money with certain class of people. And that is getting diverted toward where you can spend, I think. So I think the automobile sector possibly could be one, which is benefiting from this diversion of spending, and also from the fact that in COVID times, I think you would like to have a personal vehicle. Maybe it's a two-wheeler. I think that reduces the risk of public transport. So I think many factors are coming together, and I think it will take some time to really de-layer all these things and come out with what kind of recovery is really genuine and strong. And to me, I think the most important variable is COVID-19. I think that should not spin out of control. If it doesn't, then I think we are back on track. If it does, then it will put you on a wobbly path.
No, so is the causation so clear with COVID-19 in the Indian context? I just want to get your view on this quickly, Mr. Chenoy, because what we've seen in Europe play out is that the numbers started coming in control, the economy opened up completely, and once the numbers started rising, they slammed down shut again, and we've seen the impact of that. But in India, in a sense, the opening up of the economy and the pace of the COVID-19 cases were detached, right? We started opening up the economy when our cases were at the highest. So there was no real connector there. And the cases now have come under control even as the economy has been opening up. So do you think that the converse may play out in the Indian context, that if we do, and God forbid, but if we do have a surge in cases, will that really lead to another bout of, lockdowns or clamping down on activity?
I think the earlier thing about lockdown was to create adequate medical capability and capacity in the country, and to be able to produce enough of the PPEs, masks, ventilators, etc. that are required. Now we have actually installed base of all of this equipment and installed healthcare facilities. And unless the numbers go beyond the first wave, which is very unlikely, right? I don't think that is a cause for worry. Second, the learning is that we don't need to have extensive lockdowns. We have actually very limited containment zones, and we've learned how to control it much better. And the local authorities also can zero in. So it won't be a district-wide lockdown. It'll more be, a block or not a block in the administrative sense, a block of houses or, some areas. So that actually also would limit the impact. But I think our understanding, and if the Prime Minister's address was something, he says that we have to be cautious, and he felt that, and if you read between the lines, he kind of indicated that a full-scale lockdown is not going to happen again. We're going to go into unlock, we're into unlock 6, and the next step will be taken on the 30th of November. So I think this is going to continue. And companies also have used this time to look at alternate supply chains, more than one supply chain. So if an area gets locked down or one facility is not available, they have access to another facility to actually go on. So seeing a lot of this happening. I believe that even if it were to happen, the economy will not take a hit as much as it took in the initial phase of the complete lockdown going forward.
Puja, just your thoughts on this point, because, I don't know if that comparison to the resurgence or the second wave in Europe is apt in our scenario. We've been sort of marching to our own beat, right? We had to unlock because it was hurting too many people who were vulnerable in the informal sector. There was no choice but to unlock. Meanwhile, maybe herd immunity may kick in. We may have a vaccine by Q1. In any case, you would agree that a lot of Indians have now learned how to live and function with COVID-19.
That, and I think, Tamanna, the whole point of the lockdown was to sort of increase your healthcare facilities, make sure that it, is made available in rural areas outside of the cities, main big cities. We've not really done that. So when you're not doing that, then having a lockdown is only just reducing your economic activity. I think those may be the reasons why the indications from the policy side are that, regardless of how the numbers are, whether there's a second wave or not, there may not be as strict lockdowns as we've seen earlier this year. That said, if you have loss of health and lives, that automatically means, losses for the economy, right? So you're losing resources. So I do think that, if the COVID situation gets out of hand and there is another wave in India, it will surely have an impact on the economy. We cannot delink the two. I don't think that can be done. There's the impact of a lockdown, and then there is the health impact, which does impact the economy. So that impact will not be avoidable if there is a sort of a second wave.
Tamanna, if I may just add a line to that, I think if we get a surge again, the manufacturing sector will not be impacted that much. I think the recovery in services will become more difficult. I think that, and services is still a large part of the economy. I'm more worried about that, and it's quite resource intensive, labor intensive as well. So manufacturing, I think even if you look at the lockdowns in Europe, the manufacturing activity is still continuing. I mean, they have not announced that the manufacturing units will be shut as it was done earlier. So I think people have learned to, and manufacturing activity doesn't involve that much of contact with the end producer. So consumer. So I think it can still continue. The issue is if services go down, eventually or are not able to pick up, eventually your income levels will come down, and income levels coming down can be detrimental for the general demand in the system. So that is how I would look at second surge if that happens. We don't really know. I mean, this is a virus which is very, very non-linear in nature. I mean, it can't be predicted.
Yeah. No, so absolutely, it's unpredictable. I think the only thing that is in our control is making sure that each one of us is being careful and masking and maintaining social distancing. But overall, let's, for this moment at least, take a pause and feel happy and cheerful about the fact that you've had an economic rebound 2 months in a row. We'll probably be having a third. It's up ahead of the festive season. We don't know what's going to happen next. But at least for now, for today, there is some good news. On that note, I want to thank all of you for joining us on the first big discussion this evening on this show.